Hello, all of you seekers of intuitive wisdom, tarot, soul truth, and curiosity about what it takes to become a tarot reader and how I became one. I am now in my mid-50s and began this journey as a child, really, but having no clue that this would be my destiny to serve thousands of clients consistently over time. And I really had other ambitions. I wanted to be a ballerina for many years, and then a peacemaker in the Middle East as time went on. And little did I know that this is where I would land my feet and feel my strongest and most special in serving the greater humanity. So I began the journey at a young age because I was in the good fortune to be born of two parents who were in the pursuit of esoteric wisdom. I grew up with thousands of books, literally 10,000 books, floor to ceiling in every room, as my parents loved to read every subject under the sun, from history and the esoteric spiritual texts of the Kama Sutra in Tantra, or the Bhagavad Gita of India, or the Emerald Sea Scrolls that were ancient texts from the Bible that took a more mystical perspective, and so on. They were in active exploration of every bit of knowledge they could get their hands on, and I had all of that at my fingertips. So I was inspired by them. They were unique individuals, both born in very strict religious Christian upbringings. My father Catholic, my mother Seventh-day Adventist, and they had undergone a series of disillusionments that led them to break free from the rigidity of their beliefs and to explore other ways of expressing their spirituality, especially in the 1960s in San Francisco, where I grew up. And my mother was a bit of a flower child type, sex, drugs, and rock and roll before she married my dad. And I was witness to some of this. So I had to find my own stability, and even rebelled against all of their radical ways. When I later became a teenager, say about 15 to 20, I became a born-again Christian myself. I went to Bible studies and Christian retreats and had Christian best friends and boyfriend and everything, and led a very pure and conservative life for a while in my rebellion against them. But in any case, backtracking, my father was very shamanic in his ways and would take us to Native American, Indian, Cherokee gatherings for solstices and equinoxes around bonfires. These were quite memorable for me and made a great imprint in terms of honoring the cycles of life, the interconnectivity of all life, and the natural cycles of nature that keep us in healthy rhythm with our own natural beings. And my mother, who was very curious about Asian ways, became a great lover of the goddess of compassion, Kuan Yin, from the East, and began to study astrology. By the time I was 5, she was full on into it. And they vicariously were teaching me about all of these matters. And it was weaving its way into my psyche. Even at the age of 9, I had the good fortune of experiencing a tarot workshop hosted right in my very own home by my parents, where we got to make our own tarot decks. And here's one of the drawings I did representing the Empress in tarot, the third major arcana. So I showed an Asian Empress, showing this energy of abundance and joy in the earth, with the life. And yes, so I had experience from then. My parents did have several tarot decks around the house, which I began to enjoy just for their beautiful pictures and my curiosity. I didn't even study all the meanings early on. It was only later in my past that Christian stage I went through, which, of course, I found great value in the spirituality of it, and the structure felt quite safe, and the sense of community I valued. And I still would respect Christians in those matters, that they do share spiritual community and can be genuinely good-hearted, compassionate people, but they can also go the other end of the spectrum, depending, and be quite rigid and judgmental. And this is what I had to move away from. And so then later in my 20s, when I went off to university, I had the great ambition of becoming a peacemaker in the Middle East, because I had a great value on world peace, and I wanted to do everything within my power to help humanity. So I pursued a bachelor's in international relations, and then went on to Washington, D.C. to try my hands in international politics, working for nonprofit organizations to start, in cross-cultural relations. It was right at the time of the Persian Gulf War, and then later in the breakdown of the Soviet Union. So the end of Cold War times, of course. And I was hoping to do more work in bridging cross-cultural relations, creating more conflict resolution, working with the Central Asian countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, working within Turkey. I even spent a year on and off in Turkey doing research for my master's degree in international communications and conflict resolution. And I had great hopes and aspirations there. I had a lot of a connection with the Middle East, flashbacks, if you like, of past lives. I felt tears of truth and had flash memories all the time of 14th century Ottoman times, and times as a nomadic person in the Taurian mountains that bordered Turkey and Iraq. And I was very interested in doing everything I could. So this journey was very interesting. I got involved with a Turkish man for a number of years, was even engaged to be married, and got familiar with Islam and the spiritual truths of Rumi and mystical culture there in the Middle East that preceded Islam even, and felt a real resonance there that continues to this day, that I have a strong soul connection, let's say, with the Middle East. And it's interesting that the tarot, many of its origins come through the mystical Middle East, the Kabbalist Judaic traditions that later melded into Christian ones, and then the Egyptian roots before that, that wove their way in symbols of the Ankh and enlightenment of the crown of Isis and so on. So lots of inspiration in my journey to do tarot. And then in my 20s as well, as I was pursuing that master's degree and finishing it off in Washington, D.C., in hopes to be seated there in international politics, I was also going to parties and having fun with friends. And at those parties, I would try my hands at tarot reading. So there was one Halloween party that I stayed up all night giving readings to friends, and even lost my voice for a couple of weeks after I was so intensely into it. And all my friends would joke, or no, they wouldn't joke. They would say it quite seriously that, hey, Danielle, why don't you become a tarot reader? And I was like, no way. I'm gonna do something lofty and go out and make peace in the world. But I would just thought of it more as a hobby during those years. But I taught myself well, and I could do readings well for friends and family. And I had at the time lived by myself in Washington, D.C., in a beautiful old Victorian overlooking the Capitol building that had a turret at the very top. And that turret was so magical to give friends tarot readings in, with the sparkly lights of the Capitol in the distance. And I loved those years living on my own there. So the inspiration was always interwoven in my journey. And then something happened in the middle of my career development. I had finished my master's degree, also concurrently got a certification that took me 3 years in healing energetic body work that came about because I love dance. And near my university was a dance studio operated by a woman named Charmaine Lee, who fused her background in dance with this energetic healing work called polarity therapy. So I was inspired by her greatly to get this certification, which enabled me to become both a yoga, dance, and energetic body worker, working with the 4 elements, earth, air, water, fire, and the 5th element, ether, which also are the language of the tarot and astrology that my mother had mentored me in. So I began to weave everything together and had this extra set of tools to put to use. And I kind of had it in my side pocket to use mostly for myself, and then for good friends, of course, and sometimes family. But then I fell in love about this time too with an American guy who later became the father of my first child, Persephone. And I was inspired by him to travel to Ireland because he got a job transfer here back in the heyday of the rise of the techie companies, back in the days of AOL, one of the first to position itself over in Ireland. And he went off to Ireland, and I went on over. I have Irish blood, and Celtic blood, Scottish, and so on. And I said, hey, why not? I'll come over for a stint and enjoy this mystical, magical land of Ireland that will allow me to have a cross-cultural experience and enjoy Europe, enjoy this love. So I did so, and the love was a bit rocky and went up and down, even though I was in my early 30s by then. So I did end up having a baby with him, but we never got married or anything. And I didn't plan on staying in Ireland, and there was thoughts of going back to California to raise my child, but I wanted the father to be there. He was still working happily in Ireland. And even though we weren't married, it turned out that there was a rule way back when in 2000 that if you had an Irish-born child, unbeknownst to me, I had no clue about this, that I could remain in Ireland living and working. And so my destiny took a turn. I abandoned my international career because there were no jobs of this kind in Ireland back in 2000. And I began trying my hands at tarot reading professionally. So I tried my hands in a mystical holistic shop and center in Dublin City Centre, and said to myself, okay, if I do well at this and people want to pay me and they want to return or refer people, then that's a sign I'll carry on. And if not, I'll abandon it and go on with my other interests. But one of the reasons I did that at the start of my journey in Ireland in my 30s was because I wasn't initially legal to get a professional job. And I was, there weren't that many jobs available at the time, other than in the techie world for a non-native. So I said, okay, here we go. So I tried my hands at it, just dabbling in it, just a bit like a hobby at first. And people really liked my readings and they wanted more. They wanted to come back. They wanted to refer their friends or family or whomever's. And so I said, okay, I'm on to something. And I continued on kind of as a sideline, but I did take on a professional career because I quickly became legal to work. And I went back to communications, which I had my master's in, working in an engineering firm here in Ireland for 6 years, working quite diligently. But I kept finding she kept making lateral moves, then recession hit. And by the time recession was full on, I was on to my second child. And I said to myself, this is not worth it. I'm working full time, making peanuts. All my money is going to childcare and transport and living expenses, and there's nothing left. No time left, and could hardly spend time with my children. So I handed in a voluntary redundancy notice, which I was granted after 6 years in the company, and was able then to get full on into this alternative esoteric and healing work that I do to this day. And I went full on into it. So it was no longer just a sideline. I mean, I'd been doing a lot on the sideline, retreats in Italy, where the original tarot was discovered in the 14th century. I had an affinity with Italy and gave a big retreat there. I also gave retreats in Ireland and in America, but those were always in my holidays. So I was always working in my holidays doing this sideline, but I went full on as a profession into it. And it took me, a time to build up my clientele further. But now I'm 10 years, 11 years full on into this career. I built my clientele even before that, but now have a clientele throughout the world, in Europe, as far as Australia and Asia, all over the United Kingdom, in America, both the East Coast and the West Coast, California, where I was raised, the East Coast, where I lived for many years. And so clients all over the world, really, that I'm serving now, and in these times with restricted circumstances, doing it on Zoom, or WhatsApp for people. But, when I can and it's possible, seeing many clients in person, of course, both for the healing energetic body work I do and the tarot and astrology, soul truth work I do, channeling in from the Akashic records. I have still with me a deck from over 30 years ago that's quite beat up by now, as you can see, going in tatters, the Wheel of Life deck that I love. That's very multicultural because, of course, I have the degree in international relations and communications. Love to serve people from all cultures without judgment, with 100% compassion for all people of all walks of life, all backgrounds. And indeed, I do. I serve people from all different cultures, all different professions, all different socio-economic backgrounds. I do hold judgment to nobody, and that's part of my background. And now I've come to, rather than creating international peace in the world for a greater continent or population, I'm creating inner peace, one person at a time. People go away from my readings feeling better, lighter, more optimistic, more peaceful within. And this is my aim, to empower people, to create the inner peace for people. And I feel more empowered myself, more effective myself going about peacemaking this way. One of my latest decks, also a multicultural deck, is this one, the Tarot of the Divine by a Japanese artist. And it's also very multicultural, fairy tales from around the world, mythologies from around the world, which I'm really enjoying and initiating in these current times, the springtime with my clients. So there you go. That's my journey as a tarot. It had ups and downs, and I must say, I did run away from it more than once, which is normal and natural in your journey if you're delving into the tarot or other esoteric archetypal tools to go deeper into the unconscious and deeper into our souls and psyches. You're going to go up and down with it. I'll do another video on that for what I call the W curve of tarot exploration, becoming a tarot reader. But I must say, I would never look back. I mean, this work is so fulfilling and satisfying and helpful for people. I really feel like I'm making a difference, and I can stay sustainable doing it, which is amazing as well. And I have nobody over my head, nobody to boss me around or tell me how to work. So I love my freedom of being a tarot reader as well. And I can manage my own time and schedule, spend time with my children, spend time with my beloved partner, spend time doing other joys, time in nature and so on that I adore, doing healing work. The flexibility is amazing, the versatility, the ability to work anywhere in the world, and doing it anytime, anywhere is fantastic. So if you are considering a career as a tarot reader, I do encourage you. I teach tarot, and I'm happy to pass along my wisdom in helping and supporting you becoming a tarot reader. I've already helped many people become tarot readers who are doing it professionally now. So I know I pass on good skills, and it's not about competition because there's a tarot reader for everybody, and it's who you resonate with. And I may or may not be for you. You may have another one, or you may like to go to several. But I have plenty of people who resonate with me and need my guidance, wisdom, support, or to help bring out their own wisdom within themselves, because all the answers and truths are within, ultimately, of course. So I'm here for you if you need me. Happy to serve, happy to share all the wisdom I can with you and all of the peace I can with you. All the best in your journey. Lots of love. Lots of love.